or the failing American news media. Let me explain why you've never been less trusted, less credible, or less respected. For decades, you ignored calls from millions of gun owners to just tell the truth. All you had to do was just get the facts right about our guns and our freedom. But you never even pretended to listen. Instead, you weaponized the First Amendment against the Second. And now the whole country sees you for the mockery we've always known. Your claim to the truth is as legitimate as a thief's. If the fate of individual freedom had rested in your hands, America would have fallen long ago. But Americans put their trust somewhere else. And now, in that place, stands the most trusted defender of individual freedom in American history. We're the National Rifle Association of America, and we're freedom's safest place.
Americans must put their trust in God. It says, in God we trust. Can you believe it? When President Trump said that at the State of the Union address, and the Democrats sat on their little paws and their claws, I mean, just their wretched, totalitarian, authoritarian, collectivist claws. All of them, just like, and he was talking about lowest black unemployment in the history of recorded history. And those black congressmen, the leftist black congressmen, were sitting there not applauding. They're complete traitors. They're race traitors. They want to say any black person who's a Republican is a race traitor. They're the freaking race traitor. They want to keep black people poor so they can have a freaking legitimize their rule over them for the last 50 years, bring hell on earth to those communities, bring rampant drug crime, bring rampant mafia crime and gangbang crime because they disarm the public and brainwash everybody through the pastors that they bought off. That disarmament is good and it's Christian, it's biblical, when that couldn't be farther from the truth. They have been colluders with the multinational combines to control minority populations, which was an open stated fact by Lyndon B. Johnson and Margaret Sanger, who opened up the Planned Parenthood in minority neighborhoods to kill black children because she wanted to genocide the black race. And Planned Parenthood and abortion clinics now are responsible for 54% of dead black children. Every year, 54% of blacks are killed by abortion clinics. 54% of black children, black births. I mean, it's unbelievable. This is the reality of our world, folks. It is filled and ruled by evil. And that's why the Bible says, we fight not against flesh and blood, but against principalities and powers and rulers of the darkness of this world. Spiritual wickedness in high places. These are these people that are actually filled with the spirit of Satan. These are people that actually possess, some of them at the top level. They are actually doing Satanist worship. They literally are praying to Lucifer. They are literally doing death sacrifices, blood sacrifices, ritual sacrifices, which is, by the way, a historical tradition in the European monarchies. Especially the House of Windsor, which is the British the royal family, which is descendants of Vlad the Impaler. And Prince Charles boasts about that on BBC. And you call me crazy because I'm informed and I saw the interview where he's boasting that he's a descendant of Vlad the Impaler who was drinking children's blood, who were cannibalists. I mean, you can't make this up. It's so mind-bending. It's so painful in my head because people think, when I say these kind of things, they think I'm crazy. But it's stating historical fact. I mean, it's like just ridiculous. Unprecedented, unbelievable. On the 50th anniversary of the Tet Offensive, Lieutenant Colonel Honorable North takes a look back on how it came about and how it will later be miscategorized. Veteran U.S. Marine Colonel posted a video on NRA TV. Let's take a look at that video before we go to break. It's a little long. We'll just take a look at the beginning of it.
All of a sudden, the sky opened up, incoming. It was raining on our battery. We woke up in the morning with huge amounts of activity, noise, confusion. There was huge activity up around Hue, but nobody really knew what was going on.
How would you assess the enemy's purposes yesterday and today?
The enemy very deceitfully has taken advantage of the Tet truce in order to create maximum consternation
There's a Jeep
within
Wrangler right
South
there.
Vietnam, particularly in the populated areas.
This was happening all over the defensive lines throughout the entire area. We were under a rocket motor attack from at least 3 sides. It's chaos. I mean, you're trying to resupply the guns, you're trying to take the casualties out of the gun pits, but it was controlled chaos. The kids knew what the hell they had to do.
I asked the Lord not to protect me by just asking not to let me let down my Marines. So I just went forward knowing that I've got to go as long as I can, as hard as I can, because the battalion was counting on Delta Company to do that.
To this day, I don't think most Americans understand what the war in Vietnam was all about. Our goal was to support a democratic country that was being attacked by a communist neighbor. It was part of what we considered the great global contest of capitalism versus communism, of democracy versus a socialist system that was actually expanding all over the planet. The North Vietnamese did not see themselves as proxies for the Chinese or the Russians. They had a singular goal. They wanted to reunite their country under a communist flag. They wanted to dominate their southern neighbor and make it all basically one country. Let's fast forward through the 60s. You've got an enormous buildup of troops, an incremental buildup of troops based on a strategy that said, effectively, what we want to do is to create enough attrition among the Viet Cong and the North Vietnamese army that they'll eventually lose heart. Well, of course, there's no history for that kind of thing happening unless you destroy the enemy's ability to fight. You're not going to destroy their willingness to fight. It was a strategy that got us to the point where we had over 400,000 American troops on the ground at various points in the war. By the time I got there in 1968, we had nearly 500,000 troops on the ground inside South Vietnam. Tet, which is the Lunar New Year for the Vietnamese, is kind of